Welcome to a very special Christmas story to help you reflect at this special yet sometimes lonely or sad time of year, and to help you get to sleep, obviously. Please enjoy my story for you, A Father Christmas. Christmas Eve arrives with a calmness that seems to hush the world. Outside, the first delicate flurries of snow fall in slow, graceful spirals, each one tracing a quiet path through the air before landing gently on the earth below. The night feels infinite, as though time has suspended itself to create the perfect soft canvas of winter. The world is wrapped in the hush of winter's embrace. No honking horns, no hurried footsteps, just the soft whisper of wind through the bare branches, and the occasional murmur of passing cars in the distance. It's that rare kind of silence you only experience on nights like this, the kind that lulls you into a gentle stillness of your own. You stand by the window, your breath fogging up the glass as you peer outside. The snow has already settled on the ground, a pure, clean blanket that muffles every sound. You inhale deeply, the chill of the air sharp in your lungs, then exhale slowly, watching as the mist of your breath dissipates. It's such a quiet night. It feels almost sacred, and yet there's something stirring inside you, a kind of quiet tension, a flicker of unease, though it's hard to name exactly why. You reach out to draw the curtains shut, but stop just before your hand touches the fabric. You pause, looking once more at the world beyond. The stillness of the moment feels almost too perfect, as if something is missing, as if the night should somehow mean more than it does. You let out a soft breath, letting the feeling drift away. You've spent many Christmases like this before, haven't you? The world outside, quiet, the house inside, warm, your thoughts, your only companions. Yet, there's something different about tonight. You can't quite place it. An odd sense of anticipation, or perhaps the weight of memories long left unexamined. You close the curtains and turn back to the warmth of the living room. The lights on the Christmas tree blink softly in the corner, their multicolored glow gentle and steady. It's the same tree you've had for years, the same mismatched ornaments, some old, some new, each one carrying its own mundane yet treasured story. The little ceramic snowman from a trip to a small town years ago now. The fragile glass angel that once belonged to your grandmother nestles tightly on the branch next to the macaroni and cardboard ornament you made when you were 5 years old. Each ornament carries memories that have long since settled into the fabric of the holidays for you. Memories that are at once both comforting and bittersweet. The quiet hum of the heater in the corner is the only sound now, a low, steady pulse of warmth filling the space. You've grown used to the hum over the years, a familiar presence in the background that you never quite notice until you don't. The scent of cinnamon and pine fills the air, some synthetic, some from your trip to the shop across the town park half an hour ago. Rich, earthy, and nostalgic. The warmth of the living room contrasts with the coldness of the outside, making it feel like a sanctuary. As you move to the kitchen, the soft creak of the wooden floorboards beneath your feet punctuates the otherwise peaceful silence. Everything is as it should be, and yet the sense of something unspoken lingers. You set the kettle on the stove, watching as the steam rises, twisting and curling in the air. The faint, bubbling noise of water coming to a boil is calming, and you inhale deeply, letting the warmth of the moment sink in. The small ritual of making tea, something so simple and mundane, feels grounding in a way you hadn't anticipated. It's a process you've done hundreds of times before, yet tonight, on this festive occasion, it seems to carry an extra weight, as though in the very act of slowing down, you're making room within yourself to confront something deeper. The water begins to bubble, and you pour it into your mug, the steam rising and curling like wisps of forgotten thoughts. You sit down by the window again, your cup cradled in your hands like a precious memory, feeling the heat seep into your palms, your hands remembering to come alive again after your time outside. Looking through the window across the room, the snow falls steadily, now almost blurring the view with its soft white veil. Everything seems still, yet you can feel a small stir of something beneath the surface, something that hasn't been addressed, something that hasn't been allowed to sit still. Within your mind, a small flurry disturbs the otherwise peaceful bank of memories that you keep so preciously in your core. A memory. It's one of those memories that, once it surfaces, feels impossible to ignore. You see yourself years ago standing in the kitchen of your childhood home. It's a memory from a Christmas long past. The kitchen is warm, almost too warm, with the heat of the oven baking something your mother had prepared. A roast, or perhaps a pie. Your father stands by the stove, his hands carefully stirring something in a pot, his movements slow but deliberate. His back is turned to you, but you can still see the way his shoulders tense when he's lost in thought, thinking about, well, there's something almost mechanical about his actions, the way his body moves without really being there. You remember watching him, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence that had fallen between you over the past few years. That Christmas had been full of tension, Your father had always been a man of few words, but this year, the silence between you both felt heavier. You were both pretending for a while now that the rift in your relationship didn't exist, that the distance between you wasn't there, as if pretending could bridge the gap for you. You remember how awkward it felt to be near him, how you had both fallen into a routine of avoidance, neither of you willing to speak the words that needed to be said, the uncomfortable words, the spiky words, the words of war, the words of tears that didn't want to fall. The years of unsaid things, the disappointments, the misunderstandings, all wrapped up in the cheer of this season. What a gift, you think. That Christmas, like many before, passed by with a quiet ache in your chest that you couldn't quite name, but tucked away, hoping never to have to rediscover. And now, as you sit here, the snow falling quietly outside, you realize that nothing has changed. Not really. The tension, the distance, the silence, it's all still there, lingering beneath the surface, just as it had been that Christmas, and the Christmas before that, and the Christmas after that. You never realized how much you missed those small gestures, the moments of warmth, of simple communication, of presence, not presence. Those things that once filled the gaps between you, now absent, leaving space for drafts of loneliness that neither of you knew how to fill, no matter how many tools you bought each other, how many DIY projects you completed in cold, stony silence. You sip your tea slowly, the warmth of the liquid spreading through your chest, a comfort that contrasts with the ache you feel, like the first breath of air upon leaving a warm building and emerging into the cold, starless night. There's something in the way this night feels, something that feels like it's finally time to address what's been left unsaid. You let the silence fill you, allowing it to settle in, to become a part of the room, like the snow outside, soft and persistent. You sit in it. You bathe in it. You let it swirl around you. And then you realize, now that you've acknowledged it, like the noise of the radiator, you realize that the quiet within you isn't uncomfortable anymore. It's not the same silence from that Christmas so many years ago. It's the kind of silence that comes with acceptance, with understanding. The fire crackles quietly in the corner of the room, the flames dancing softly against the dark. The glow of the Christmas tree lights flickers, steady and soft. And then, as you sit there, gazing out the window at the snow, you begin to realize something. Maybe it wasn't the silence that was the problem. Maybe it wasn't the distance or the tension. Perhaps it was the unwillingness to accept that not every wound could be healed instantly, that not every fracture could be fixed in one moment, one conversation, one confrontation. You think of your father, of the way he had always been, the things he had never said, the way he had always tried to show love without words, you begin to understand, in a way you never had before, that a language of love doesn't always need to be loud to be real. It doesn't always need to be perfect. Love could be an honest meeting between two imperfect souls. The doorbell rings. Your heart skips a beat. You weren't expecting anyone tonight. You actively avoided having to expect anyone. And yet, you can't help but feel that this moment is the one you've been waiting for. You stand slowly, setting your tea down and walking toward the door. As you reach for the handle, there's a moment of stillness. Can you? And then you do open the door. The familiar figure of your father stands there, his coat dusted with snow, his breath visible in the cold night air, but still otherwise. He doesn't say anything, just stands there for a moment, looking at you, as if waiting for permission, or perhaps waiting for you to make the first move. And then imperceptible eye movements. Then wordlessly he steps inside. There's no need for speech, no apology, no explanation. It's just the quiet presence of him standing inside the doorway, and somehow in that moment everything feels right. The silence is no longer uncomfortable. It's filled with a kind of understanding that transcends words. He sets down the bag in his hand, and you both stand there for a moment, just breathing in the quiet, companionable nature of the room. The air feels different now, softer, warmer. You notice the subtle ways he adjusts his coat, the way he carefully places his things down, the small acts of care that speak louder than words ever could. There's no need for dialogue, no need for apologies, no need for grand gestures. The space between you feels less strained, less full of unspoken things. The snow falls steadily outside, but inside the warmth of the fire, the quiet of the evening, the stillness of the room, it all seems to whisper that this is enough. You've come full circle. The distance is not gone, but it no longer feels as heavy. The relationship has shifted, and you realize with a quiet certainty that this moment, this unspoken understanding, is its own kind of resolution. The world outside may be still, but in here, something has shifted. And you know, for the first time in a long while, that you are exactly where you need to be. 1 year later, the soft glow of Christmas lights flickers from the corner of the room, casting gentle shadows against the walls. Outside, snowflakes continue their quiet dance, twirling lazily from the sky and settling into a perfect blanket of white that stretches across the neighborhood, curing all ills, putting all rough edges to bed. The world is still, undisturbed, and serene, just as it had been 1 year ago. But tonight, there's a difference. The air feels less heavy, less anticipatory, like the moment has finally arrived, not as a fleeting thing, but as something enduring, something you can settle into, something you can lean your soul against and fly your flag upon. You stand at that window again, just as you had a year ago. The same scene greets you: snow, the quiet hum of the world, the soft silence that the night brings. It's the kind of silence that feels natural, easy. The snowflakes shimmer in the soft light of the street lamps, their delicate, uneven shapes catching your attention for just a moment. In that moment, everything feels the same, and yet everything is different. So different. You've been here before, haven't you? The soft hum of the heater in the corner, the faint scent of cinnamon and pine, the crackle of the fire in the fireplace. The world beyond this house is quiet, but inside it feels like there's a quiet celebration unfolding, a kind of peace you didn't know could exist. As you turn away from the window, the familiar warmth of the room wraps around you. The tree, still adorned with its mismatched ornaments, stands proudly in the corner. The same ornaments, the delicate angel, the macaroni and cardboard, the little snowman. Each ornament carrying its own weight, familiar, comforting, and somehow emblematic of this season's ongoing ebb and flow. You walk slowly over to the tree, letting your fingers brush across the branches, the smoothness of the needles beneath your touch grounding you in this moment. The house feels lived in. The quiet is comfortable now, not unsettling, but peaceful. You run your hand along the mantel, dusting it lightly, and pause to look at the photos of the past year. There's a photo from last Christmas, taken after your father had walked through the door and you'd shared that unspoken moment together. Your father's face is captured in the warmth of that evening. Not a word was exchanged for such a long time, but his presence was there, a silent understanding between you both. A few months later, you'd taken another photo, one with him sitting beside you on the couch, sharing a cup of tea. That moment was simple, but different than before. No tension, but ease and happiness. You stand in the silence for a moment longer, the stillness of the room offering an answer to questions you didn't know you were asking. The kettle on the stove begins to hum softly, a reminder of the small, ordinary rituals that have now become so comforting, perhaps more comforting than you ever realized before. The noise is subtle, but it feels like part of the rhythm of the night. You make your tea slowly, paying attention to the quiet. The warm steam rises as you pour it into your favorite mug, its faint scent filling the room. You breathe it in, the comforting mixture of herbs, the small ritual of it all. It seems so mundane, yet there's something profound about it. a way these small acts become rituals, symbolic ways of anchoring ourselves in the present. Maybe it's the very subtlety of these actions, the pouring of water, the stirring of tea, that allows something deeper to emerge in the quiet. You settle down on the couch, sipping your tea and gazing at the tree again. You're no longer waiting for something. You're not anticipating a change or hoping for some unspoken moment of revelation. The peace that fills the room now is different than any forced serenity before. It's not empty or fragile. It's full of the quiet certainty that things have shifted. The unspoken has been accepted, not fixed or mended, but simply allowed to be. A scar, a celebrated scar. The fire crackles quietly in the hearth, the orange glow warming the room, the soft glow of the Christmas lights dancing gently across the walls. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the rhythm of it all, the crackle of the fire, the warmth of the tea, the soft, steady presence of the world outside. You can hear the faint sound of your father in the other room, moving slowly, unpacking his holiday clothes, but without haste. The quiet of the house has changed. It's no longer the stillness of a waiting heart, but the calm of a hopeful, unspoken understanding. In his movements, you can hear the little marks of change, the way he takes care with his steps, the way he arranges the firewood, the quiet hum of his favorite Christmas song on the radio. It's the sound of him being present in the simplest yet best of ways. Your thoughts shift to last year. You can remember that Christmas Eve, the silence that hung between you and your father when he arrived, the tentative way you both navigated the space between you, as if each word spoken was glass, might be broken, if anything but hovered around. There had been a strange comfort in the quiet, in not needing to force conversation, which eventually did flow regardless. That night, your father hadn't said a word about the years of unspoken things, the things that had kept you distant for so long. He hadn't needed to. Something about his presence, quiet and steady, had opened the door to something new. Without words, without explanation, you both had found a way to share space, to acknowledge the distance without demanding it be bridged all at once. This was a gradual project. The kettle hums again, pulling you out of your thoughts. You realize that, in the silence of the past year, something has changed in both of you. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't a grand revelation. It's just that time, in its quiet passage, had allowed room for understanding. Small gestures and routines had replaced the old distance. A shared cup of coffee in the morning, of tea in the evening, of beer on the weekend. A quiet acknowledgement in a glance. The absence of expectations, replaced by the presence of each other. Your father enters the room, his footsteps soft against the wooden floor. He doesn't say anything, but there's a quiet recognition between you, as though he too has noticed the shift, the significance of tonight in particular. He sits across from you, not too far, but not too close. The space between you feels right. Just enough room for both of you to breathe. You smile faintly, and in the glow of the Christmas lights you catch a glimpse of your father's face. There's a softness there now that never was before, one you hadn't seen since distant memories, and you realize that it's not the same as it was back then. This is a new, older, wiser, more accepting smile. A crinkle of the eyes that now has the addition of a little more forehead space than before. In the simplicity of the one moment, there's no need for words. The fractured silence between you has, over the course of this year, settled into something more peaceful. Something steady. Steady like the fire, which crackles again, the light flickering across your father's face. For a brief moment you feel a wave of warmth, of gratitude for this quiet, this simple, shared space. Your wounds are simply a part of the landscape now, a part of the story that you both carry, unspoken but understood. The weight of it has lessened, just enough for you to breathe at first, but now so light that it may as well not be there most of the time. As you sit there, companionably, listening to the songs, watching the snow as it drifts past your window, the minutes stretch comfortably. You look at the tree again and notice that this year your father has brought a new ornament, a new memory to add to the pantheon. It's a picture in a bauble. The picture makes you smile. The picture makes you cry. How can you smile and cry at the same time, you wonder? The image of your mother looks out at you from the depths of the globe, hanging in your living room. Your eyes meet your father's. Your tears see his. Your smile acknowledges his smile. Your hand reaches for his, and in that moment, all is calm and all is right.